Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar on funding your graduate degree. This is brought to you by the Return Volunteer Services part of Peace Corps, and my name is Teresa Claxton. I am a marketing specialist in the Office of Third Goal and Worldwide Schools and Return Volunteer Services here at Peace Corps. I'm joined by my colleague Brian Todd in University Programs, who's going to be talking about the Coverdell Fellows program a little bit later on. I wanted to give you a little bit of background to let you know why I'm speaking to you today about graduate degree funding. I was a college recruiter and I worked in higher education for 15 years before I joined Peace Corps. I was also a graduate student, and I want to share some of the tips that I have learned from my own graduate funding experience, as well as tips that I have found that have worked for other students, and tips that I've learned from other fellowship advisors along the way. What I am not going to do today is give you a list of scholarships or graduate programs that come fully funded or with funding attached. These are many and the possibilities are endless, so there is no way that I can give you a complete list. What I am going to cover is the cost of attendance. What does that mean? Funding options for degrees in the US and for degrees abroad. Some traditional sources of funding, alternative sources of funding that we're going to explore, and then the Coverdell Fellows program as well. So first of all, what is cost of attendance? I want you to start thinking that the cost of graduate school is much more than just tuition. And funding is much more than just scholarships or loans. So what goes into a cost of attendance? The U.S. Federal Financial Aid Office determines your award package based upon your cost of attendance. That's a figure that your university that you're applying to gives to the federal government that includes tuition, student fees, housing, meals, books and supplies, incidentals, because we know students are going to need toothpaste, they're going to need a haircut, and also travel to campus. The big difference is that travel to campus might vary greatly. So if you live in Boston and you're going to a university in Boston, that travel to campus is going to be public transportation costs, or it could be parking fees. If you live in Boston, but you're going to go to school in Texas, that will also include airfare. And it will also take into account a cost of living conversion. So it might be more expensive or less expensive to live in Texas and go to school than it is to live in Boston. Now, if you're looking at going overseas for university, that travel to campus is going to vary as well. It's going to cover the cost of studying in London, how to get to London, and visas. It's also going to take into account, again, that cost of living conversions, because it might be more or less expensive to live in that country, and also currency conversion. So how well does the dollar stack up to where you're going to be studying? We're also going to look at different sources of funding in the United States. So funding can start with U.S. federal financial aid. So this is your FAFSA application, your loans, your student grants. And again, grants will only apply if you are studying in the United States. You can't take grants money abroad. The GI Bill, if anybody is a veteran, or if their parent is a veteran, or if their spouse is a veteran, you can use that to fund your graduate study. You can also work part-time. You can work part-time on campus as part of a work-study program, or you can just work part-time in the city where you're living. There are also university scholarships, and these vary greatly by the university, by the program, and what scholarship is available. So usually there are more scholarships available in the sciences than there are in the arts and humanities, unfortunately. And dollar amounts vary greatly from institution to institution and from department to department. There are also different positions on campus that come with tuition reimbursement and also a stipend. Those would be your research assistant position, your teaching assistant positions, and your graduate assistant positions. Also think a little bit more broadly. So you don't have to just be a teaching assistant in the English department. You could be a graduate assistant in the study abroad office. You could be a graduate assistant working with student athletics, working in the Dean of Students office, working in the financial aid office. There are a lot of positions that are in student services that you may not have thought about. Another thing that you could do is also become a resident assistant. So that's another type of RA. A resident assistant, usually that position will come with some room and board or some housing fees associated, so that is something that you don't have to pay for. It's part of your job. Another thing that you can look at is if your employer that you currently have has any sort of education benefits. Do they do reimbursement for an MBA program, for example? And what kind of commitment afterwards do you have to make to that company in order to get that funding? So there are lots of employers, even part-time employers, fast food employers, all kinds of employers that offer education benefits. They also might offer insurance as well, which is something else you need to think about with your cost of attendance. If you're going abroad, you can take some of the same options with you abroad. You can take federal financial aid with you abroad. You can take your GI Bill with you abroad. You can work part-time. Now, you're going to have to think about what kind of worker rights you have under your student visa. Something that's very different is university scholarships. University scholarships are going to be smaller in the award amount, and they're going to be fewer and far between. So not every department will have a scholarship. There might be a very limited number of scholarships available, and their award might be £1,000, £500 versus $10,000, things like that we might be used to in the United States. Another big difference is that internships abroad tend to be paid. A lot of countries do not have the culture of free internships where you're working to gain experience. It goes against their labor laws, so they must pay you, and you would then be doing a function for that organization. So that's something that might also be very different. There are also going to be national scholarships that are available if you go abroad. So the Fulbright Scholarship, the Marshall Scholarship, and the Boren Scholarship are all ones that are accessible to you. Please bear in mind that these are highly competitive, and they have a limited number of them based upon where you want to study. You must also have been fully accepted to the university before you are granted that scholarship. So that means you need to have a backup plan in place before you know that you have that funding. So you need to have alternative sources of funding in place. You cannot count on getting the Fulbright, the Marshall, the Boren, those types of things. There are other types of international scholarships that are country specific. DAAD is for Germany. The Swedish Institute of Scholarships is for Sweden. The Endeavor Scholarship is for study in Australia. These are golden ticket scholarships. So just like the Fulbright, the Marshall, and the Boren are golden ticket scholarships that are available to U.S. students going abroad, those scholarships internationally are the golden ticket. So they include the tuition, getting to campus, your travel, your visa, your living expenses. And again, the golden ticket scholarships are fewer and farther between. So I want to focus a lot more on alternative sources of funding. This is where a lot of things are untapped. You're not thinking about all of the possibilities out there to get funded, and there are a lot more work involved. So one of the places where you can look for funding is service clubs. Rotary has a golden ticket scholarship. You don't have to be a Rotary member in order to access the scholarship. Kiwanis has a scholarship. Girl Scouts has a scholarship. So what kind of service clubs and organizations are you involved with? Are your parents involved with? Are your aunts and uncles involved with? Or are active in your community where you can access scholarship funding? Now remember, each scholarship is going to have its own criteria, and it's going to have its own deadline and award amount. So make sure that you're looking at those things carefully. There are also religious, cultural, heritage, or ethnic organizations that offer funding for graduate study. The Korean American Society is a great example. They give away hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in funding options for people with Korean American heritage. That's something that you can access. There are also professional and business associations or organizations that you might already belong to, or your parents belong to, or that feeds into your career aspirations if you're going to be a student in that organization, that offer scholarships for funding for graduate studies or for further studies such as a graduate certificate. There are also alumni associations that you can tap into. So for example, King's College London has a United States Alumni Association that gives £1,000 to anyone who has been a King's student before, whether they were a study abroad student or whether they even worked at that university before. So there's lots of ways that you can tap into these alternative sources of funding. They are going to take a lot more work, but the payoff could be exponential. So what you're really trying to focus on is, how can I put together my own funding package? So think about it like that. How can I put together my own funding package? Because every scholarship that you get is a loan that you do not have to accept. There are also other alternative sources of funding, such as scholarship databases. The Alternative Guide for Postgrad Study in the United Kingdom is a list of thousands of scholarships that are available to anyone who is thinking about studying in the United Kingdom. The Peterson's Guide for Graduate School Scholarships is a free source of scholarships that are available. And every year, millions of dollars go unclaimed because people don't apply to the scholarships. So again, remember that deadlines, award amounts, and criteria are going to differ based upon any scholarship, but they are available for you. Another idea is to do crowdsourcing, is to say, hey, grandma, for Christmas, I don't really want a pair of socks, but what I really need is this book to go with my class. Could you fund this book for me? Or, hey, I really have to take this field trip as part of my class, but I don't have the funding for it. Hey, family and friends, can we use a crowdsourcing platform and collect money for me so that I can go on this trip? So that's another way that you can cut down on your cost of attendance. Something else that you can do is an exchange for service. I promise there is nothing shady in that term, an exchange for service. So you can say, hey, local travel agency, how about I write a blog for you, one blog a month about this destination where I'm doing my studies, in exchange for my airfare twice a year so that I can go to school and come home and visit my family. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the direct ask. This is something that I have seen pay off in wonders. I just have to share a story with you. I had a student when I was working in a study abroad office who had a program that she wanted to participate on that cost $25,000. $25,000 for a semester is a lot of money, and she did not have it, and she did not have enough financially to cover it. She didn't have access to that. She was tapped out. So I said, what can we do? She wanted to write a letter. And she wanted to put very specific things into this letter. And she sent out probably 1,000 letters in the community to businesses of all sizes and to organizations of all sizes. A grocery store funded her entire program. A grocery store. You never know where sources of funding are going to pop up. And this is what I mean when you look at alternative sources of funding. So what goes into a direct ask? I can just give you the example that I learned from this amazing student. Make a direct, informal appeal. Make it personal and say, this is what I'm asking for. This is what I'm planning to spend my money on. So if my entire budget is $25,000 all in, excuse me, I'm asking you for $800 so I can fund my visa. That is a very specific ask that's a part of a larger whole. Include a photo of yourself so they can get to know you. Excuse me. Include a photo of yourself so they get to know you and they can see you and they can start to connect with you. Include a line item budget. What exactly is the cost breakdown of me attending this program? And how can this amount that I am asking for fit into the larger whole? Make donating easy. Accept a cash, accept check, or set up some sort of funding platform that you can then give a web address to. Make it easy, but do not accept pledges instead of donations. If they're going to donate, make sure that they actually donate instead of pledge money, because you don't have it unless it's actually in your hand. And also, the most important thing to do is to follow up if you haven't received a response. Follow up twice. That's the magic number. Don't make yourself annoying, but definitely follow up, because somebody might have just set your letter aside intending to come back to it, and everybody needs a little reminder every now and again. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Brian Todd, and he's going to speak about the RPCV Coverdell Fellows program.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and thank you all of you who are joining us today for this presentation. My name is Brian Todd. I'm with the Office of University Programs here at Peace Corps, and as Teresa had mentioned, I'm talking with you today about the Coverdell Fellows program. The Coverdell Fellows program, as you may know, is a grad school benefit for returned Peace Corps volunteers that offers to you financial assistance along with a professional internship. It's an opportunity to lace your Peace Corps service into a master's degree program. Now, and briefly, the Coverdell Fellows program, it started in 1985, and the whole idea behind the Coverdell Fellows program was to advance the third goal of the agency, i.e. to help promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of the United States. The program brings returned Peace Corps uh, volunteers graduate school opportunities at a reduced cost. Through the internships in underserved American communities, Peace Corps Coverdell Fellows expand upon the skills and intercultural understanding they developed as volunteers. Since the inception of the program, we've had over 5,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers participate in the program and have made a difference in communities throughout the nation. Okay, the Coverdell Fellows program, as I've mentioned, provides financial assistance for returned Peace Corps volunteers who would like to continue graduate studies. That can be master's degrees, law degrees, doctoral programs, even certification programs. It requires an internship in an underserved United States community. Currently, we have over 100 university partners that are participating in the Coverdell Fellowship Program, with over 300 different types of degree offerings out there. The types of aid that are offered are financial assistance, application and tuition waivers, graduate and teacher assistantships, in-state tuition. Just to name just a few of the benefits associated with this program. Currently, we have over 700 current fellows participating in the program. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. The Coverdell program provides great opportunities for returned Peace Corps volunteers to continue their service to underserved communities. As a Coverdell Fellow, as I mentioned, you will receive financial assistance. You also get the opportunity to develop professional experience via an internship. You have also, if you enroll in school, your one-year non-competitive eligibility status may be extended up to 3 years, depending upon your hiring agency's discretion. Another thing to keep in mind is when you become a fellow, you're furthering the Peace Corps mission. In other words, you're sharing your experience in the classroom and in communities. You're going to help fulfill the third goal of Peace Corps. Now, when you go to the Peace Corps website and you look up the Fellows program, typically what you're going to find is you're going to find the opportunities to look at the different programs that are offered there at the various universities through a search engine. This will allow you to really hone in on what you're after on a particular degree that you have your heart set on, maybe a particular locale, particular school that you're interested in. So there's all sorts of little options that that are available to you once you do look at the web page for the Coverdell Fellowship Program. Those who are eligible for the program, and Teresa, we may need to skip forward a couple of slides here. Those who are eligible for the program are any returned Peace Corps volunteer who has a returned Peace Corps volunteer status. This status includes volunteers who have completed the full 2-year tour of Peace Corps service, those who have been granted early close of service, those volunteers who are granted interrupted service because of circumstances beyond their control, or maybe volunteers who are medically separated. The application process for Coverdell programs varies from university to university, so that's why we recommend to you to go to our Coverdell website, our web page on the Peace Corps web site, and take a look at the application process for each institute that's out there. It will vary from university to university. Next slide, please. Oh. So today we covered the cost of attendance. We've also covered various funding options for degrees in the United States and abroad. We talked a little bit about the traditional sources of funding, alternative sources of funding, and I just got through covering with you the Coverdell Fellowship Program for returned Peace Corps volunteers. At this moment, we will entertain your questions.
I see a question coming in. Is it cheaper to go abroad or is it cheaper to stay in the United States? And I'm going to say that that depends. Usually a degree in the United Kingdom or a degree in Europe is actually 1 year for a master's program and 3 years for a PhD program. So if you're looking at your overall cost spent, the program might be a little bit more expensive, but you're saving in time. So it really depends on what you'd like to do. So get done faster, spend less money. That's one of the benefits of going abroad.
I was taking notes for her.
Okay, I got asked to go back to the direct ask example, and I'm going to just move the slideshow back so that you can see all of it and see all of the tips. So bear with us. Hopefully this isn't going too quickly. There we go. Okay, dear Peace Corps staff, will in-state tuition qualifications my chance in being accepted into a Coverdell Fellows program?
No, not really. Again, this is something that varies from university to university, and this is something that you will need to check with each university that you have your eye on. But no, in-state tuition qualifications do not increase your chances of being accepted into the program.
I would also add to that, in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition for graduate programs, the cost difference might be very, very minimal, or there might be no cost difference whatsoever. Graduate school works a little bit differently than undergrad when it comes to tuition. Okay, another question for you. Do you have any tips on the timing of applying for scholarships? Should I wait to find out which schools I'm accepted to and then start the asks and application? That really depends on the scholarship. I would not wait to start doing your scholarship research and then see what the deadlines are, and also seeing within the criteria of those specific scholarships if they say that you must have already been accepted to a university. Because sometimes they'll say you can be in the application process, or sometimes they'll say you must have a firm offer. But no matter what, they're not going to release the funds to you until you have that firm offer and you've accepted the offer from the university. Sometimes scholarships will also pay directly to the university on your behalf instead of releasing the funds to you. So that means it will go directly towards tuition and fees. So if you're trying to ask for scholarships that will apply towards books or apply towards airfare, things like that, you have to think about that as kind of a reimbursement to yourself of the things that you might have to pay up front. Okay. Let's see. Are there any other RPCV-based scholarships besides the Coverdell? I have been granted Coverdell for the schools I was accepted to, but I cannot afford the tuition. I do know that the National Peace Corps Association offers reduced tuition rates to certain institutions, or they might offer scholarships for certain institutions. And you could look at their website. It's peacecorpsconnect.org. You don't have to be a paying member in order to access those services either. But other than that, I don't know of any that are RPCV specific. What you may want to do is ask your local RPCV group within your area, or even ask your RPCV group associated with your country of service to see if they have any scholarship opportunities available. Okay, here is a question, and by the way, congratulations on your Coverdell Award. And another question for you, and this one is for Brian. If and when will new university partnerships for the Coverdell Fellows program be announced?
We announce those towards the end of every summer. Be looking for that. We are starting a new Coverdell proposal submission cycle. So in other words, the universities will submit a proposal for acceptance into the Peace Corps partnership programs. So be looking for that every year, I would say probably about September or so, and you'll start seeing that on our website. It takes a little while for us to get the universities up and running on our website, because we do have to go through the legal process of the MOAs, the memorandum of acceptance, memorandum of understanding. So be looking for that, towards the end of summer. I would say is probably going to be your best bet that you'll see it on our website.
Okay, and here's another question for Brian. Is there precedence for initiating a Coverdell program at a university that currently does not have one?
I wouldn't say that there's a precedence. We like to see Coverdell programs with our universities, with all universities that are interested in partnering up with Peace Corps. But we have to look at a lot of different factors. One of them is, of course, we look at the proposal that we're giving, and we do grade them upon what they're offering for the return Peace Corps volunteer. If it doesn't meet certain guidelines, of course, we cannot accept the university within the program at that time, and so we try to work to resolve that with the university. So I can't say that there is a precedence for initiating a Coverdell program at any specific university. We do like to see partnerships develop with all of our universities that are out there, but we do have some criteria that we do have to follow.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, do you have to go through a travel abroad program at a U.S. institution to get FAFSA funds for going abroad, or can you apply to FAFSA for attending a foreign university? The answer is you can check with the financial aid office at the foreign institution to see if they have a FAFSA code. If they have a FAFSA code, you can write that on your FAFSA application, and that university works directly with the U.S. government and Department of Education to release the funds, just like they would if you were in the United States. Not every foreign institution has a FAFSA code, and if they don't, then you need to work with FAFSA to see if you can use those funds. It's not a guarantee unless there is a FAFSA code at that institution. Okay, another question. Are there any Peace Corps scholarships or programs available for students who are already participating in a graduate program through Masters International? I think this one's for Brian.
There are Peace Corps programs that are out there, but these are university specific. They're not tied with Peace Corps. Like we have several universities that will offer a scholarship for a return Peace Corps volunteer. Typically, we'll see it like maybe a department head that is a returning Peace or is a return Peace Corps volunteer and likes to help out other return Peace Corps volunteers that apply for that program. They may not be affiliated with Peace Corps. In other words, they're not Peace Corps partner. They haven't developed a Peace Corps partnership program. So there are lots of scholarships that are available out there for return Peace Corps volunteers. You just need to be familiar with the different resources that are available for you when you're doing your search. Teresa had mentioned several of them for you, so keep that in mind when you're looking around. That other scholarships are available for you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, what are my options for online programs? Do we have university partners who offer online programs and scholarships for the RPCV working professional?
And that would be another one for me. Yeah, we're seeing more and more of this. This is becoming the trend. I think as the days go by or the years go by, we'll see a lot more universities that'll jump on this option. And so we do have this listed on our website. When you do conduct your search at the various universities, you'll see whether or not they offer the distance online learning options for you. So yes, we do have programs out there that offer online training. Some of them are completely online, by the way.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Mhm.
Another one for you. I've already heard from a university regarding Coverdell. I filled out FAFSA and I'm waiting on financial aid. They said that I need to accept, I'm assuming accept my offer before I hear from financial aid. This sounds backwards. How do I know I can afford school? I'm going to say that that is typical of any university. You need to be able to say that you can fund yourself in order to accept your offer. Now, sometimes you are asked to put down a deposit when you make an acceptance of an offer, and then you'll find out about financial aid later. And if you decide you can't afford it, you can either defer your offer for usually a year while you get your funding together, or you can say, you know what, I'm just going to forfeit my deposit because I can't afford it now. That's the way every university works, unfortunately. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I really don't.
Okay. Yep. And then, do these scholarships apply to a volunteer who is medically separated? Again, I'm assuming that's a Coverdell Fellow.
Yeah, and the answer to that is yes, it can apply to somebody who's medically separated. If you have return Peace Corps volunteer status, you're included.
Okay. Okay. All right. Tony says, thank you for the great info. You are welcome. Can you combine RPCV service with a study program, or should I go through an RPCV recruiter with this question? I think you're referring to the Masters International program. Brian?
Yeah, it's the Masters International program, and this is a program that has been graciously been retired this last year, September 2016. So currently we don't have a program set up like that anymore. Now, I will tell you that several universities through the Coverdell Fellowship Program do offer credit for your Peace Corps service, and that's something to keep in mind and to talk about with your university when applying for this particular program.
Okay, thank you. If a Coverdell Fellows program has a relationship with a specific school, but not the specific program I'm interested in, would it be possible to talk to the university or Peace Corps to see if it could be included?
The answer to this one is a kind of a long one. And I'm going to try to make it short. Yeah, you can talk to the university, and I have seen universities tend to sway towards the student recommendations for a particular program to be included within the fold. But that can be a lengthy process. It depends upon how much time you have on your hand. It is something to mention. If you have a good relationship with the university that you're considering, you know the people there, it is something to talk about with, you know, your dean, and see if possible that they would get to working on maybe including a particular degree within the fold. So I would recommend that if time is not on your side, and this is something you really want to get over with, you want to get into a program and get it done, look at some of the other programs that are out there. And I think that's a common mistake that a lot of return Peace Corps volunteers make, is they get tunnel vision on one program out there and don't really check out the whole field. There are tons of programs available. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of return Peace Corps volunteers, I really have a personal feeling that they're not availing of themselves this particular opportunity. There's so much that's on the table right now as far as like scholarship money and different types of programs that are out there. And of course, like I said earlier, we got over 100 schools currently that are participating in the program, and we have more and more every year.
Great, thank you. One more question for you. How competitive is the Coverdell Fellowship? And who evaluates the application? Does the university? Does Peace Corps? Does both? I think we need to make the distinction here between your application for admission to the program and application to the fellowship itself.
Right. The university will be the one who will evaluate the application to the fellowship's scholarship program. They'll have the say on that. Competition can be steep for some of these programs. At other universities, not so much. There are universities out there that really haven't had a lot of participation in their programs, and you know, it's a shame. You know, some of these programs are just very top-notch facilities, but it's just like I said earlier. I have a feeling that a lot of returned Peace Corps volunteers tend to forget about this particular program and don't really apply to these schools. So I think you'd be surprised that the competition at several of these universities is not as great as what you might think. Now, at other programs, yeah, it can be very tight.
Thank you. Have you heard of volunteers having good luck with getting scholarships through universities directly without the Coverdells based upon their service? I'm going to say that the Peace Corps experience makes you very unique, and people like to award uniqueness. So anytime that you are applying to a scholarship and applying to the program to which you want to study, you should definitely highlight your service, highlight the skills that you've learned that make you unique. And people want to know what you're going to be bringing to the table. They want to know the way you're going to be contributing to the program as a whole, because unlike undergrad, graduate programs, a lot of people learn from each other. You learn from the other people in your classroom. So professors are looking for a diverse student body in diversity of experience, and the Peace Corps experience is very diverse. So that makes you a very competitive applicant for your application to your chosen field of study, but it also makes you a pretty interesting applicant for a scholarship program. Okay, so someone said, do you recommend applying to fellowships that are similar? And I'm not quite sure I understand this whole question. Do you recommend applying to fellowships that are similar, I'm assuming, to the Coverdell? And if it's one or the other, choosing to invest time in one versus the other, what would you choose to do? I think you're going to have to look at all of the criteria for every fellowship and every scholarship that you're looking at and choose how to divide your time. But the key is, and the goal is, to get as much funding as possible, and that is time consuming. So if you are thinking that you need to, apply for a fellowship for study that you want to start in August, you better get on it. If you've got a year from now, still get on it, because it does take a lot of time to put together your own financial package and your own funding package, and that's the goal. So definitely look at the criteria of the scholarships and the funding opportunities that you have that you want to invest in. A lot of times you can recycle some of the same materials, so scholarship applications look similar. Maybe they have essay criteria that look similar. If you are putting together an application package for one, what can you then recycle to put in something else as well that might help you manage your time when applying to these scholarships? So we're not going to compare side by side one versus another, but just to say, look at all criteria and see where you can divvy up your time to really maximize your resources. So, okay, the next question is, I was applying for a Coverdell scholarship associated with a certain program, but I'm not returning to the United States for at least a year. Should I still reach out to the Peace Corps rep there? Yes. Applying to graduate school can be a lengthy process, and you can usually apply up to one whole or even sometimes 2 whole academic years before you plan on attending. And you definitely want to get started on that funding and definitely have an acceptance letter in your hands, to just make your case stronger when you're applying for funding. So definitely start reaching out as quickly as possible, especially when you know what your interests are and you've made your application. Okay, my question is about possibly doing a law degree in Africa. Is it possible to get a scholarship from the US to study in East Africa? I think that a lot of countries will have scholarship funding databases or specific scholarships that apply to them. Again, law, to be honest, might be a little bit tricky depending on where you want to practice law, because sometimes you can't take one law degree from another country and bring it back to the US to then sit the bar. It can be difficult. So that's something that you should definitely reach out to the American Bar Association about before you make your application to decide where it is you want to study law. But when it comes to scholarships, when you're looking at all of your scholarship possibilities, the first question you should ask the scholarship committee is, can I take this money and use it abroad? You might even find some golden ticket scholarships that look for students who want to do degrees in countries that are off the beaten path. And those might be places that you can start looking. But for specifically ones doing law, and specifically in Africa, we don't have any examples off the top of our heads. Okay, another question. Are there Coverdell Fellowship programs in the medical field?
Currently, we have programs that are in the nursing field, and I think that the individual is asking whether or not we have programs outside of nursing. We do have a couple of programs with the nursing practitioner. Primarily, we're talking public health related degrees, Masters of Public Health, DPH. There are a couple of universities. One I spoke with about 3 or 4 months ago that is looking into the feasibility of including an MD program within the fray. So keep an eye out for that. We don't currently have that, but this could be, something that will come later on down the road.
Okay. How early should you start applying for your personal funding package? Do you have an example timeline for someone starting the fall of 2018? And we don't have any examples, especially for starting, a year and a half out. Just the earlier you can get yourself together, the better. So you can start making rough drafts of your ask, for your informal ask. You can start reaching out to your service organizations to see who has a scholarship, who doesn't have a scholarship, and what's the criteria. Now is the time to start gathering materials. Now is the time to start doing research to say, okay, these are the scholarships I'm going to go for. These are a little more time consuming, and put together your own timeline. Like these, I know that the due date is here. These, I know the due date is here. If you are looking at some of those national golden ticket scholarships, the application deadline is very early. Very early meaning like October if you don't want to start until the following August. And especially for the national scholarships like the Boren, the Fulbright, the Marshall, you should work with your undergraduates, your undergraduate degree, their fellowships office, because they have fellowship advisors who will look at your applications and endorse your applications for that specific fellowship or scholarship. Those, again, are highly competitive and very time intensive. Okay, so just get started early. Now is the time. If you're thinking about starting your graduate degree fall 2018, now's the time to start doing your research and figuring out which scholarships you're going to be applying for and putting together on a calendar their deadlines and getting started. Okay, another question. Do you know of any resources off the top of your head for these golden ticket scholarships in countries off the beaten path you mentioned? The Boren Scholarship is one of them. So if you actually, I think it's the U.S. Department of State that does the Boren, the Fulbright, the Marshall, and then I think there are a couple of other national scholarships. So I would do a Google search, U.S. State Department scholarships, and see what comes up. Also, Rotary. Rotary is worldwide. A lot of those are off the beaten path. That does have a golden ticket scholarship. All right, we're going to open it up for just a few more questions. And this is your last opportunity. If you have questions that we still haven't answered, to go ahead and type those in now. We're going to be online for another probably 5 to 10 minutes. And then if not, you can also email either Brian or I for other questions if you have other questions. So again, we don't have a ready-made list of scholarships available. We don't have a ready-made list of programs that have funding available either. It does take some research and some work on your part. Okay, any more questions? Okay, we're going to keep it open for one more minute.
Wait, got it.
Are there any master's or PhD programs associated with Coverdell that are offering close to a full ride or assistantships?
Yes, we have several. There, there's actually quite a few. It's just a matter of just getting on our website and taking a look at what's out there. You're also going to be seeing in the days ahead some changes to a lot of the web pages at the various universities that'll list the complete breakdown of what you're getting should you apply and be accepted into their Coverdell program. So yes, there are full rides that are available to you.
All right, another question. Can you start a Coverdell Fellowship after already starting your graduate program?
You can start as many Coverdell programs as you can possibly do. There's no limit to that, and best of luck to you. There's been several individuals that I've known of that have gone from Coverdell to Coverdell in their lifetime.
Okay, and can you apply for a Coverdell Fellowship after you're halfway through your program?
Yeah, and that's something that when I was going through a program, we had one young lady that was a returned Peace Corps volunteer. She wasn't aware that the university that I was at had a Coverdell Fellowship program. She had completed 2 semesters and went ahead and applied and was accepted into the program. That's up to the university, of course, but it can be done.
Great. And do you have any advice for someone having to choose between different Coverdell programs?
This is going to be a personal preference. You're going to have to kind of do some soul searching on this one and weigh out what programs are you going to be able to live with for the rest of your life. And I have my personal preferences, and of course, the next person sitting next to me might have a completely different preference for a Coverdell program. So this is something that's very individualized. A lot of wonderful programs out there, really. And so if this is something that you're interested in, please, by all means, go take a look and see what's out there.
Great. Thanks, Brian. One more question. Can you explain what the Alternative Guide to Postgrad Funding is and how you can gain access to it? Yeah, the Alternative Guide to Postgrad Funding is a database of charities and organizations within the United Kingdom that offer scholarships for graduate funding. And in order to access it, you have to first make an application to a university in the UK. And once you have made your once you've been accepted, they will give you a login and a password. So it will go through your university's financial office. All right, we're gonna keep it open for one more minute. If you have any more questions, here is your final chance. Is there any update when or if any more schools will be added to the Coverdell program? I think you answered this a little bit earlier, Brian.
Yeah, what I would like for you to do is just kind of keep an eye out towards the end of summer, early fall of each year, because what happens is during the summer we're going through a Coverdell Fellowship proposal cycle where we have universities that will submit their proposal, and then it goes through an evaluation process and stuff, whether or not they meet the criteria for the Coverdell Fellowship program. I check back about that time because usually we will see their web presence on our website, and you'll have something to look at and see the different universities that are out there. So that's the best time, I would say, probably about end of summer, early fall. Take a look and see, check back often, in other words.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We hope that this was really helpful, that you gained some tips and tricks so that you can put together your own financial package and you don't have to rely on student funds and student loans for graduate school. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be paying for graduate school for years and years and years. So please feel free to reach us at the email addresses that you see. Also check out the RPCV Career Center and also the Peace Corps University Fellows Program. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.